Why don't you tell me a little bit about cafe culture in Paris?
The best selection of croissants.
We're going to be showing you fantastic cafes over the course of the day.
It's home of so much beautiful art and the ultimate cafe culture.
When we're in Paris, we have to visit cafes.
Our coffee culture in Paris, it has changed a lot for the last 5 years.
With over 12,000 cafes, there's always one nearby.
Bonjour. Today I, Prisha Prakash, will talk about cafe culture in France. Cafe culture is as ingrained in Paris's identity as its wide boulevards, iconic architecture, and haute couture. You can't go more than a few feet without stumbling upon a cafe, its tables and chairs spilling out onto the street, its no-nonsense waiters ready to greet you throughout the day, and most of the night. Forget the museums, galleries, and the Moulin Rouge. If you want to truly understand Parisian culture, then you've got to look at their cafes. French cafes are still a large part of what draws people to the country. When you visit, you will certainly spend afternoons lounging in cafes and soaking up the French culture. I present to you a video about the history of French cafe culture and where it stands right now.
Of enthusiasm and excitement here as the French rekindle what is a long-standing love affair with cafe culture.
Un café bien français, c'est là où on trouve le plus de sympathie.
This very French love story began here, at the Procope, the first French cafe founded in Paris in the 17th century. A place for the well-off to discuss intellectual and social issues over a cup of expensive Turkish coffee. In the 19th century, working-class equivalents popped up. In post-war France, they were to the French what the local pub was to the English, part of the fabric of everyday life.
C'est une réunion de copains qu'on peut discuter.
But for a long time, it was very much a men's club.
A man is 5 minutes late. He's going to think twice before returning home, only to be met with his disapproving wife. So to escape this atmosphere, he'll take refuge, so to speak, in the bistrot.
Fortunately, mentalities changed in the 60s when both young men and women started coming to cafes to dance or to socialise on a budget.
Ah, du café. Café sur café.
C'est parce que c'est le moins cher.
In the villages, the bar was even more anchored in local life than in the big cities, complete with its cast of regulars drinking their glasses of wine at the counter.
Vous buvez combien de ballons rouges par jour?
Pour tout mettre une moyenne 6-7.
In the 1980s, the government launched several campaigns warning of the dangers of alcohol abuse, which at the time was responsible for half of all road accidents.
You can't deprive a workman of his coffee and his drop of rum. That's not alcoholism.
The 90s were a difficult decade for French cafes, going from over 500,000 in the 1960s to just around 34,000 today.
I am very sad. I've been so happy here. I don't know where to go.
In remote villages, a way of life slowly disappeared as population numbers dropped. Cafes are so central to French culture that some are calling for them to be given UNESCO World Heritage status, much like the baguette, which the government submitted for UNESCO's consideration in March of this year.
So that was it about the French cafe culture, its history, and where it currently stands after the pandemic. Thank you so much.